Hey, Rob, how you doing? David Menzies here with my co-host, Tamara Ugolini. Rob, we ended the clip on you talking about how the mainstream media, basically, you really can't trust them to deliver the news. And, your story is so incredible in terms of a breach of privacy that I thought we were going to have the proverbial media snowball after we premiered your story, which I believe was 2 days ago. And you know what, Rob? Lo and behold, breach of privacy is in the mainstream media. It's all over. But it's this. Here's today's National Post. Tim Hortons mass invasion of privacy. They're more concerned. And I mean, I agree. I think Tim Hortons was offside, but this was somebody signing up to an app. There was all these terms and conditions. It looks like Tim Hortons allegedly might have breached that in terms of where you're going. But this pales compared to you, an ex-law enforcement officer, somebody with no criminal record, being the recipient of a wiretap. And I think the biggest question of all, Rob, is this. What did those members of law enforcement say to that judge or judges to get this? What was their elevator pitch in which they said, we must monitor the conversations and the social media sites of Mr. Stocki because he is a threat to national security, or what? This is the biggest question of all. What do you think, Rob, they said to have this egregious invasion of your privacy granted in the first place?
Well, in seriousness, I can't think of anything that they would have done. If I was to approach this somewhat, lighthearted, but still seriously, I'd say maybe I parked over the line once in the past 3 years when I was at the grocery store. I mean, that's probably the extent of my, law-breaking activity. Like I said, I volunteer at a lot of places, run businesses. I have employees. I have 2 wonderful children. This is beyond me, where they could come up with any sort of reasoning to convince a judge. The only thing I can think of is, do I say the word lie? Did they lie about what they were actually putting in this document to convince to my phones and my electronic devices?
Rob, I think you're right. And as we discussed on Parliament Hill, I get this vibe. It's like a weird combination of 1984. That would be the wiretapping into the whole Big Brother is watching you, or in this case, listening to you. And also the film from 20 years ago with Tom Cruise, Minority Report, where we have a pre-crimes unit. We get our information from psychics that we think really, really have a good hunch that Rob Stocki is going to commit a crime in the future, and we better monitor him. Of course, in the film, they would arrest you, convict you, and you do time based on a hunch. In this case, it's just listening to your private conversations on a hunch. Is that where we are at in Justin Trudeau's Canada in 2022?
Well, clearly we are. We are there. And I just want to reiterate that, you're absolutely correct about this not being in the mainstream or the legacy or the Trudeau bot media. The only place that people can get news nowadays, legitimate news, things you'd want to hear to know what's going on, is stations like yourself, news services like yourself. It's the independent media that's actually informing the public. And to some degree, it's the intelligent public that's figured that the regular legacy media is propaganda. It's not informing us of it. As a matter of fact, I suggest that it's even dumbing down the population because there's nothing of value. It's painful for me to watch. The stories are so irrelevant. There's so many things happening in the world right now. And what is the mainstream pushing? Johnny Depp and that other lady, I don't even know her name. It's mind-boggling. And the comparison that you make about the Tim Hortons privacy breach, I mean, give me a break.
It's unbelievable.
It's worrisome. It's worrisome.
Tamara, what do you make of this? Because if it could happen to Rob Stocki, an upstanding citizen, ex-police officer, no criminal record, I would suggest it could happen to anyone, especially us at Rebel News. I could see somebody going to a justice and saying, well, you know, that Tamara Ugolini, the stuff she's writing about COVID-19, it's dangerous. She's a threat to the health and well-being of Canadians. I mean, what would be your reaction to being wiretapped based on some trumped up theory like that?
At this point, not surprising. I would not be surprised, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's sad.
And I'm thinking ahead too to when Canadians can finally actually leave the country, when we can fly. Are we going to see a mass flux of people fleeing Canada? Because look at the state of affairs in this country. It is deeply concerning and troubling and very scary, slippery slope. I mean, when you first told us about this story, first of all, it's shocking, but at the same time, as I've stated, not surprising. Yep. And it begs to reason that are we actually next? You know, am I to be receiving something of similar in the mail any day now?
Oh, Tamara, as I mentioned, I'm sorry to say this, Rob, when we first heard your story from your own lips, we thought you were a crank. It was so preposterous that someone like you would be wiretapped. And then you showed us the evidence, namely that letter from the Attorney General's office that put it right in black and white. Yes, Mr. Stocki, you were a subject of a wiretapping. Nowhere in the letter does it say the reason why. I think that's shameful. I think in the interest of full disclosure, that should be there. But thank goodness that we had that evidence. And but we're going to continue to monitor this story, of course, as it goes on. You have been in contact with others that have been wiretapped. So that's the other big question. How many Canadians, especially those involved with the Freedom Convoy, have had their phones and other electronic devices wiretapped? Hopefully we'll make some headway there. But this is election night. You are a candidate for the New Blue Party. Based on what you're seeing right now with the early returns, Rob, what's your analysis?
Well, you know, it's amazing how in seconds, the election of the polls closing, literally seconds, they've declared for the new majority leader of Ontario. I think that's incredible. I wonder, I mean, there's some stuff going on in the background right now with regards to the ability to verify with paper ballots, with scrutineers, whether or not these results are accurate. I mean, that's probably a conversation for another day. But you know what they say: win without boasting, lose without excuses. I agree with that on the premise that the game was fair. So I'm concerned a little bit given what I've seen so far. I'm not sure how far I can go into it. But one thing that's interesting, I did notice that the leader of the Liberal Party lost his seat. That was kind of some breaking news for this evening. But what can I say? I can tell you this: running for politics, absolutely. Running in politics was absolutely amazing. The amount of people that I've heard, recurring themes that I've heard at the doors, and it just makes me wonder. You know, if truly Doug Ford got this majority after wiretapping me, breaking the law, forcing people to have jabs against their rights, which is absolutely illegal. It's just a matter of fact that he holds the government right now, but in law, that's illegal. All things he's got away with, and now suddenly he's won a majority again, whereas I'm hearing at the doors, one of the biggest concerns is the distrust of government. Mm-hmm. So how does someone who I keep on hearing in my riding, which is a conservative riding, where so many people are talking about the distrust of government, win such a huge majority and the scrutineers aren't allowed to count the ballots? You know, there's a lot of weird things happening, and we are living in interesting times. There's no other way to put it. We're living in interesting times.
Well, Rob, I agree. I think it's downright baffling, this election, compared to so many I've covered in the past. And a constant theme Tamara and I have been discussing is that you look at the economy in terms of fuel prices, in terms of what you're paying at the supermarket right now. Inflation is out of control. Healthcare is a mess. These are the top two issues on the minds of Ontarians. Usually that is a disaster for the incumbent ruling party, but apparently not this year. What is your take on that?
Well, you know, you summed it up. When you look what we have, We have rising inflation. People are having trouble keep making ends meet. A lot of people have lost their homes because of the mandates. A lot of people who volunteered for me said, Rob, I have to volunteer for you. I'm the victim of my job because I want to protect my health. I want to protect my health in a good way. So we had tons of scrutineers out tonight. We had tons of helping with our signs and even members of the public. Lots of my clients were voting for you, Rob. We know your character. You got it. You got this. And there was a lot of excitement. When I looked at the numbers, based on the conversations I've had with people, they're unbelievable. Now, if I was to be able to have my scrutineers look at the ballots and say, you know what, this is the ballots were checked off and this is how many votes you got, better luck next, no problem. Every election, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've been scrutineering for years. Now, suddenly this election, we're not allowed to scrutinize the ballots by hand to verify what the tabulations are. And we have a crummy economy, people losing their houses, people losing their jobs, and Doug Ford wins an even larger majority. At least I'm not sure if he actually won a larger majority. I think he did.
Yep.
But there you go. So is this how an integrity vote from the public indicates that we're rewarding our politicians for behavior? The guy hasn't kept a single promise. The PCs haven't kept a single promise from last election, yet they won even a bigger majority. I don't know. I find it really difficult, especially a person who's a bit of a political junkie. And I've been following politics probably since I was 7 or 8 years old. I've never seen this before. It's unbelievable. But the one common denominator is not common denominator. The two unbelievable things here are A, he won an even bigger majority, and B, we're not allowed to count the votes. Interesting times, folks.
Well, Rob, I want to thank you for your time. We're running out of racetrack here. But on the other issue, of course, that egregious breach of your privacy, I hope we will touch base in the near future as our investigation continues there, as we find other people who had this done to them. The idea of you being a potential enemy of the state because you have a contrarian political view to the governing parties is absolutely, it's both heartbreaking and terrifying to me, and something has to be done. And it's a hell of a lot more important than people having their Tim Hortons app allegedly breaching their privacy. So we're going to keep on this file. And thank you again, Rob, for making time for us.
Thanks,
Thank
Rob.
you for all you do, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hey folks, before you know it, September will be here. That's when the Conservatives are going to have their latest leadership convention. Do you want to get your news from the legacy media? I sure don't. And if you like the coverage we're bringing you, please go to leadershipreports.ca. That's leadershipreports.ca. And if you can chip in $1 or $3 to cover our expenses, we would greatly appreciate that.